Welcome to another edition of Focus on Alternatives, a partnership between Adisa and Real Assets Advisor. Today we have Daniel Oschin. He is the Chief Strategy Officer with Shopoff Realty Investments. And today we're going to be talking about the differences between Reg D investments and Reg A investments. So Daniel, why don't you kick us off by a simple definition of each?
Well, in the simplest form, Reg D, or a private placement, falls under an exemption called 506. And there's either a 506B or a 506C. In both cases, the investors have to be accredited investors. That is, they have to have a net worth of more than $1 million exclusive of their home, or they can have an income of $200,000 as an individual or $300,000 if they file jointly. They have to fit into that box in order to be able to invest in one of those offerings. In the case of 506B, you're not allowed to generally solicit. That means it has to be done in a controlled environment with a pre-existing relationship. Under 506C, you can have general solicitation, which means you can advertise freely to bring in clients into that investment. And we see that most being used right now in crowdfunding. On the other side of the spectrum, you have what's called Reg A, or Regulation A, and there's a variety of versions of it, but there's a version being used right now, Reg A+, which allows you to have up to $50 million raised during a 12-month period of time. And within that, under certain rules and with certain filings, you're allowed to have general solicitation, meaning you can go out publicly to the market to raise money, and your investors do not need to be accredited. They do need to fall within a spectrum of a certain amount of net worth or income, but it's a much, much lower standard to which a much larger group of people fit.
So Daniel, I want to focus on kind of the investment opportunity here, but before we do, we're talking about capital formation here. We're talking about companies trying to raise money. So why would a company choose a Reg D offering versus a Reg A offering?
An issuer would choose the difference between a 506 Reg D product and a Reg A based on what is appropriate for the type of asset or vehicle they want to bring to market. A Reg A works well with a product that's appropriate for a public market and a less sophisticated investor in a broader spectrum. That tends to be a smaller number of assets or things that could be brought to market. Typically, most sponsors should be focused on a 506 product. 506B being the most appropriate, it's the most restrictive, also coincidentally is the least expensive and easiest to bring to market. So it has more speed, it has a simpler process, it's less expensive, and it has a higher standard, which works best within the environment of what they're doing. But Reg A really does not work very well for most products, and that's why you don't see as much Reg A. But when it works right, when it is the right structure, the right package for a product, it is very, very effective, and we've seen it work really well with certain sponsors.
Okay, so now if you're a financial advisor or broker-dealer and you have deals coming across your desk, so you just discussed that these are two different vehicles or basically wrappers.
Yep.
So you have the underlying investment, and then you have which vehicle it's in or which wrapper it's in. As the financial advisor, how should I begin evaluating these options?
So an advisor should first and foremost apply these products based on what is underlying within them. Is the sponsor manager the right sponsor manager? Is the product or asset they're bringing to market the right one? The wrapper really isn't critical to that decision making. Once the product comes to them, they should then determine whether or not it's been designed properly. Have they followed the right rules? Has it been designed correctly by legal? Does it have all the right features and functions that it should within it? And then they can determine how it is suitable for their client. Suitability being the critical factor. You don't have to generally solicit. You don't have to pick a client that's not accredited just because you can. The question is the product suitable? And in the end, the wrapper should be less of an issue to an advisor and a client. The one thing that does come with Reg A is a requirement for reporting that's at a different standard than you get in Reg D. Essentially, in a private placement Reg D, you have no reporting requirements whatsoever. In a Reg A, you do have certain reporting requirements and things you need to do to maintain that exemption or that right under Reg A+.
Daniel, when we're back to evaluating these two offering types, what are some potential pitfalls that advisors should be aware of?
That's a good question because really that gets to the heart of what the issue is with these kinds of products. The appeal of a 506B or C product to a sponsor manager is it's really inexpensive to enter that marketplace. You can put together a very inexpensive offering document. There are essentially almost no reporting requirements. There's a Form D and a few things you need to do, but so very little that almost anybody can get into the market with a 506B. Reg A requires a lot more money, time, effort, and energy, and it does require an approval of the SEC, an authorization, although the effectiveness of a Reg A does not say that the manager, again, is a good manager or that the product is good, and sometimes people get confused by that. So one of the things you need to look for in a 506C offering is the fact that a sponsor manager is required to be able to review and approve each investor coming in and confirm that they are actually accredited. And if they don't do that properly, they can actually blow the exemption. That is a fairly high threshold that isn't always taken as seriously as it should be. So my answer would be the biggest pitfall you could fall into with any of these products or any of these wrappers, is that a sponsor manager can be using it as a way to raise capital without fully understanding all the requirements or doing all the things that they should do within these offerings. And therefore, what I would do as an investor is make sure I'm working with a company that's been doing this for a long period of time, that has the right kind of legal representation, that has a history of performance without having a lot of issues. And within that, make sure you've got a financial advisor who's done the due diligence to confirm that these are companies that know what they're doing.
Daniel, thank you for walking us through that. And I think the key takeaways here are understand the wrapper, why the company chose that, understand how it affects the investor, but most importantly, dig into that underlying investment. So I appreciate you outlining all of that for us. So for more information on alternative investments and capital formation, please visit realassets.advisor.com or adisa.org. Thank you.